The air hangs thick with the scent of crushed grapes and fresh blood. You stand in a garden that should sing with life vines heavy with fruit, their leaves whispering against polished stone, the distant strum of a harp pulling notes from the evening breeze. But your eyes fix on the tree to the left, where a branch bends under its load. A head dangles there, jaw slack, eyes long since dulled by the sun. It belonged to a king once, Teumman. His lips, cracked and pale, seem to mouth silent curses at the couple before you. The man reclines on a couch, one arm draped lazy over a cushion, a golden cup balanced in his fingers. Wine sloshes as he laughs, a low, rolling sound that echoes off the walls. Beside him, his queen sits tall in her chair, her robe a cascade of embroidered stars, her gaze steady on the servant pouring more drink. They toast to victory, to the empire that stretches from sun-baked deserts to river-fed plains. Servants fan them with peacock feathers, their movements silent, practiced. Birds flit between the branches, oblivious. A locust hums in the vines, its wings a faint rattle against the quiet. But then your gaze shifts lower, to the shadows pooling at the garden's edge. Figures move there, not free but chained in posture alone. Women, veiled once, now their faces bare, eyes downcast like stones in a riverbed. They carry trays of figs and bread, their steps measured, as if each one costs a breath. One pauses, her hand trembling on a dish. Her robe clings wrong, torn at the hem, stained with the dust of a march that lasted weeks. She was no servant born. Her fingers, once ringed with jade from distant mines, now grip clay like any other. The king glances her way, not with hunger, with ownership, the kind that brands deeper than fire. This garden blooms in Nineveh, heart of an empire 2,700 years buried. These walls carved in gypsum, etched with scenes that never fade, hold more than triumph. They hold the machine of power, grinding royal blood into dust. And in their grooves, the story of one woman who refused to break quietly. Her name was Tanittu, daughter of the rebel Teumman, a princess who dreamed of reed boats on the Ulai River. Now, her shadow dances eternal on these stones, a warning whispered to every king who follows. But why? Why etch shame into art? Why turn a daughter's defiance into a spectacle for the ages? That question pulls us back, through smoke and salt-sown fields, to the machine that built it all. What you're about to hear involves sexual violence and the humiliation of captives in ancient warfare. These events are drawn from inscriptions and reliefs of the time, but they unsettle. If this pulls too close, step away. I respect that. For those who stay, we chase not the cruelty for its thrill, but the gears that turned at the empire's cold calculus of fear. Understanding the system honors the silenced more than lingering on their pain. Imagine a world where rivers carve empires like knives through clay. The Tigris and Euphrates, twin veins pulsing with silt and seed, birthed cities that mocked the gods with their spires. Assyria rose from those waters, a colossus of mud brick and iron will. By the 7th century before our era, it sprawled from the Nile's bend to the Zagros peaks, a realm where lions prowled palace grounds and scribes tallied tribute in cuneiform scratches. Kings weren't mere rulers. They were Ashur's chosen, the storm god's fist, builders of gardens that cheated deserts and libraries that trapped the stars' secrets. This wasn't chaos born of bloodlust. This was a machine, oiled by fear and etched in stone. Roads like veins carried couriers on swift horses, their satchels heavy with clay, seals orders to governors, tallies of grain, whispers of plots from the fringes. Armies marched not as mobs but as engines. Chariots in wedge, archers in ranks, siege towers groaning like beasts. Conquest wasn't glory's fever dream, it was accounting. A ledger where one rebellious city meant 10,000 heads on pikes, their shadows long enough to shade the next. And at the helm, a king who read omens in sheep livers by dawn and dined on roast gazelle by dusk, Ashurbanipal, son of Esarhaddon, grandson of the conqueror Sennacherib, born not to the throne's roar, but to its quiet forge. He entered this world around 685 before our common count, in Nineveh's shadow, where the air tasted of incense and iron. His father, Esarhaddon, had clawed the crown from civil war's jaws, brothers slain, loyalties bought with Babylonian gold. Esarhaddon saw in his youngest son not a warrior's fire, but a scholar's spark. Ashurbanipal learned the bow's curve and the stylus's bite in equal measure. By 10, he could recite the Epic of Gilgamesh from memory, its verses of flood and hubris rolling off his tongue like river stones. By 20, he bent the composite bow, arrow-finding bull's-eye at 100 paces. But beneath the lessons lurked the machine's hum. Esarhaddon drilled him in the rites: how to read a liver's speckles for victory's sign, how to flay a traitor's skin for the god's feast. Power, his father said once, voice gravel from a battlefield cough, is not taken, it is maintained, like a dam against the flood. The flood came early. In 672, Esarhaddon named Ashurbanipal crown prince of Assyria, his elder brother Shamash-Shum-ukin for Babylon's softer throne. A treaty sworn on the gods' altars bound the brothers' ink on clay, blood on altars, but envy festers like untreated wounds. Shamash-Shum-ukin chafed under Nineveh's shadow, his letters to Elam polite poison, Elam, that ancient thorn in Assyria's side, a land of reed marshes and ziggurats veiled in mist, where kings wore crowns of twisted horns and armies struck like scorpions from the hills. For centuries, Elam had raided Babylonian fields, toppled Assyrian statues, dragged kings' bones through Susa's dust. Esarhaddon had humbled them once, but grudges root deep. Ashurbanipal's first brush with the machine's edge came in 669, as couriers galloped in with word of his father's death. Esarhaddon, en route to Egypt's sands, succumbed to fever at Haran. The empire teetered Egypt's pharaohs scheming revolt, Arabian sheikhs withholding camels, Elam's Teumman sharpening spears in Susa's forges. Ashurbanipal, barely 20, crossed the mountains in days, his chariot's wheels churning dust to signal strength. Crowds parted in Nineveh, their cheers a roar that drowned doubt. He sacrificed bulls at Ashur's temple, their blood pooling hot on marble. The machine whirred on, but Teumman watched from afar, his spies slipping through passes like smoke. He had murdered his way to Elam's throne, purging rivals with quiet blades. Now he eyed Babylon's unrest, whispering to Shamash-Shum-ukin of shared crowns. That spring, as barley bent under rain, the whispers turned to steel. Teumman marched on Babylonian borders, his banners snapping like whips. Ashurbanipal's response was no tantrum. It was calculus. Scouts mapped the Ulai River's bends, shallow here, treacherous there. Engineers forged iron-tipped rams for the prows. Diviners slit ewes' throats, entrails promising Ashur's nod. By summer's scorch, 40,000 Assyrians, spearmen in scale mail, slingers with lead-shot pouches, forded the Tigris under moonless skies. Teumman met them at Til-Tuba, his Elamites a tide of bronze and fury. The river ran red that day, not with dawn, but with the blood of 20,000 fallen. Teumman's chariot splintered under arrows. His son, a boy of 15 summers, clutched a spear too heavy for his hands. Both heads rolled into the mud. Ashurbanipal knelt then, not in grief, but gratitude. He carved the moment into memory, literally, in palace walls yet to rise. But victory's aftertaste soured. Teumman's kin scattered like chaff, some fleeing to Madaktu's hills, others begging sanctuary in Nineveh. Among them, whispers of daughters left behind in Susa, their veils hiding eyes that burned with their father's fire. One such shadow would soon eclipse the garden's vines. 3 years passed in fragile peace. Ashurbanipal turned to clay tablets, his library swelling with scrolls from Babylon's ruins, hymns to Inanna, star charts etched in reed juice. He paced Nineveh's halls, stylus in hand, dictating annals that sang his name to eternity. I, Ashurbanipal, they began, the delight of Nabu, the favorite of Marduk, but the machine demanded fuel. Tribute lagged from the east. Elam's new king, Umanigash, a puppet installed by Assyrian hands, faltered under Teumman's ghost. And Shamash-Shum-ukin, his letters grew curt, his envoys thick with Elamite gold. The storm broke in 652, as locusts stripped the fields black. Shamash-Shum-ukin rose, torches lighting Babylon's walls in rebellion's glow. Elam answered the call, Teumman's old allies pouring across the Ulai like a second flood. Ashurbanipal's rage was no blaze, but a forge's steady heat. He marched south, leaving scribes to tally the cost. Granaries emptied, roads patrolled, omens read thrice over. Babylon fell after 2 years of siege. its walls breached by ramps piled with the bones of the starved. Shamash Shom perished in flames, he lit himself, his pyre a beacon for the disloyal. Elam paid next. Umanagash bent knee, offering daughters as bonds, 3 girls, veiled in silk, their eyes wide as the Zagros. Ashurbanipal accepted, not for beds, but for chains. They vanished into the palace's inner veils, their names scratched into ledgers as gifts from the east. But one refused the script. Tanittu, daughter of Teumman, spared the Ulai's blades by a mother's plea. At 19, she had ridden beside her father on hunts, her bow loosing arrows at gazelle's flank. Susa's halls knew her laugh high and clear, echoing off lapis walls. When Assyrian scouts dragged her family in chains, she spat at their boots, her veil torn in the struggle. "Tell your king," she said to the captain, voice steady as river stone, "that Elam's blood does not bend." He laughed then, but noted her fire. She reached Nineveh not as spoil, but spectacle. Chained to a cart with ivory tusks and golden bulls, paraded past crowds who pelted her with dust. The machine turned her not to slave, but symbol. Her father's head already hung in the garden. Now, his heir would kneel in the light. The air in Nineveh's north palace tastes of cedar oil and fear. Dawn filters through latticed windows, gilding the gypsum slabs where carvers wait, chisels sharp as scalpels. Ashurbanipal strides the hall, his robe whispering against stone, a eunuch scribe trailing with wax tablet. "Here," the king says, pointing to a blank wall. "The river. Show the waters churning with their dead." The lead carver nods, his team falling to work, hammers tapping rhythm like a distant drum. Sparks fly as they rough the forms, chariots splintering, spears arcing, Teumman's crown toppling into foam. But Ashurbanipal's gaze lingers lower. "And the women," he murmurs, "from Susa's gates, veiled but eyes forward. Let them see." Tanittu stands then in the chamber's half-light, wrists bound with linen soft as mockery. Guards flank her bearded men from the hills, their eyes averted. She wears a shift of plain wool, her hair unbound, falling like a river's tangle after flood. Before the rebellion, she had been Tanittu of the reed boats, her days filled with the Ulai's lap and her father's tales of gods who favored the bold. She wove garlands for Ea's temple, her fingers nimble with lotus thread. Lovers came in whispers, one a Bowier's son whose kiss tasted of pine resin. That life ended with the first Assyrian horn's wail. Now, at 22, she faces the king across a table strewn with maps, Susa's fall marked in red ochre. He studies her not as man to woman, but a praiser to lot. "Your father defied me," Ashurbanipal says, voice even as a scribe's tally. "He burned my stele, scattered my bones in the dust. Elam sheltered my brother's fire. What say you to mercy?" Tanittu lifts her chin, the linen biting her skin. "Mercy is for the weak, king of dust. You take our rivers, our gods' horns." What is one girl's silence to your empire's roar? The room stills. A guard shifts, leather creaking. Ashurbanipal leans forward, his signet ring glinting Ashur's storm in gold. Silence is the machine's oil. But defiance? That we carve. The confrontation stretches like bowstring taut. He offers terms, swear fealty, wed an Assyrian lord, birth sons who forget Elam's tongue. Her laughter cuts the air sharp, unyielding. "Wed your chains? Bear heirs to erasure? Teumman's blood runs hot in me. Strike if you must, but my voice carries on the wind. Hours pass in words like arrows. Scribes note each barb, their styluses scratching fate. Outside, carvers etch her form into stone, not broken, but bending. The king's face hardens, not to fury, but calculation. One nod to the guards. They lead her away, not to death's quick mercy, but the palace's veiled heart. Doors close with a thud like tomb seals. What followed blurred in the haze of that night, cries swallowed by thick walls, the machine's grind muffled by silk hangings. Dawn found her in the garden's antechamber, robe mended by silent hands, bruises hidden under fresh veils. No blood stained the stones, the act was implication, a shadow cast long. Ashurbanipal entered as servants cleared the air with incense. "You live," he said, cup in hand, to remind Elam of cost. Tanittu met his eyes, her own steady as the Ulai's flow. "Live, or linger as your wall's ghost?" He turned then, gesturing to the carvers waiting beyond. Both. Eternity chooses no sides. Word spread not as gossip, but decree. Couriers rode to governors. The rebel's daughter kneels. Let the east see. In Susa's ruins, survivors whispered her name like a prayer, Tanittu, the unbowed. But in Nineveh, it became lesson. The reliefs rose panel by panel, her figure amid the captives, hands clasped not in prayer, but defiance's echo. Crowds gathered at the palace gates, merchants' widows and soldiers' sons, their murmurs a tide. She spat at the king, one said, and lives to mock him. Another, her father's head hangs, hers walks the halls. The machine hummed louder, tribute flowed freer from the hills, Elam's remnants scattering like ash. This wasn't vengeance's spasm, this was system psychological siege, where one woman's shame bought a province's peace. Historians glimpse echoes today in how tyrants parade the fallen, turning bodies to billboards. But then, as now, the cost lingers in the quiet. A daughter's laugh silenced, a river's song bent to empire's tune. But that garden's peace cracked soon enough. Whispers from the east grew thorns. Umanagash, the puppet king, chafed at his strings, his court rife with Teumman's old ghosts. Tanittu, confined to veils and vigils, found allies in the shadows, eunuchs who smuggled reed pens, cooks who slipped messages in bread. Her words, scratched on stolen scraps, spoke of Ulai's ghosts rising. The river remembers, she wrote. One night, as monsoon rains lashed Nineveh's roofs, a guard faltered gold in his palm from an Elamite merchant's kin. Tanittu slipped her bonds, a dagger filched from a banquet tray, not for flight, but reckoning. From the victor's perch, the machine seemed flawless. Ashurbanipal surveyed his annals by lamplight, the library's shelves groaning under Babylon's loot tablets of law, star lore, lovers' laments. I have conquered knowledge itself, he boasted to scribes, stylus pausing mid-stroke. But reports trickled in like seepage, Elam's hills stirring, Madaktu's forges glowing anew. Umanagash sent envoys, their gifts lavish jars of date honey, bolts of dyed wool, but their eyes darted to the garden's tree, where Teumman's head had rotted to bone. Loyalty, the lead envoy said, bowing low, binds like river reeds. Ashurbanipal nodded, but ordered spies doubled. The machine's gears ground, but rust crept in. Shift now to the witness a captain from the Ulai fields. His name lost to ledgers, but his scars a map of that red day. He stands guard in the palace's outer yard, rain drumming on his helm like impatient fingers. 20 years under Ashur's banner, his hands calloused from spear haft and plowshare alike. He remembers Tanittu from the march, the cart's sway, her silhouette against dust clouds, chin high as if she led the train. Girl of fire, he muttered to his men then, earning laughs that hid awe. Now, he patrols the veiled corridors, torch flame flickering on murals of flayed foes. The Empire rewards him land in the north, a wife from Aramean stock but sleep evades, haunted by Susa's screams. Children clutch to skirts, temples' horns toppling in flames. The escalation spread like marsh fever. After Babylon's fall, Ashurbanipal turned east full force. Armies swelled to 60,000, their wagons laden with salt sacks, not for rations, but retribution. Sow it in their fields, the king decreed, that nothing green may rise. Umanagash rebelled openly, allying with Arabian riders who struck like sandstorms. Assyrian columns snaked through passes, scouts torching villages, whole huts of mud and reed collapsing in hoofs of orange. Numbers blurred in the haze, thousands herded like goats, their bleats the only tally. A breather came in a valley camp, where soldiers diced bones by firelight. One recounted a quiet theft, an Elamite bow from a dead archer's grip, its curve familiar as a lover's hip. Fine work, he said, stringing it taut. Laughter rippled, then silence as rain pattered leaves. Beauty amid the burn, a reminder that hands that loose arrows also carve flutes. From the captain's view, the machinery revealed its cogs. Generals reported to eunuchs, who whispered to scribes, who tallied for the king. Incentives dangled like carrots on spears. A plot of Babylonian soil for every rebel's head, a silver shekel per captive woman. The east empties, one dispatch read, villages to wind, fields to salt. Tanittu appeared in fragments, a note intercepted, her script bold on palm leaf. The daughters rise, it warned. The captain burned it, but the words lingered. smoke curling like question marks. He saw her once more in a courtyard drill, veiled among the palace women, her step lighter than before. Did she plot or merely endure? The line blurred, as it did for all. Incentives twisted men. A lieutenant fresh from the hills boasted of a different spoil. An Elamite singer, her voice like honey over thorns, claimed after a skirmish, "She sings for us now." He grinned over rations, tunes of Susa's fall. The camp chuckled, but the captain turned away, stomach sour. Whole clans vanished, herders from the plains, weavers from Madaktu, their tents flattened, flocks scattered, one moment etched sharp, a mother shielding her boy as flames licked a granary. The arrow took her mid-plea, the child wailing into ash. Not gore's thrill, but the system's echo. One flame to cow 100 hearths. Geographically, the grind shifted south to Susa's cradle. Armies forded the Karun swollen with melt, boots sucking mud like hungry mouths. Teumman's old loyalists rallied there, their spears tipped with desperation. The captain marched in the van, rain masking tears on his cheeks. "For the machine," he muttered, but the words tasted flat. A quiet irony bloomed in the advance. Wild asses grazing amid the salterns, fat from untended fields, their brays a mocking chorus to the trumpets. Life persisted, defiant in its dumb way. But escalation crested not in battle's roar, but a letter's seal. Umanagash sued for peace, offering Tanittu's kin sisters spared the Ulai as surety. Ashurbanipal refused. "Bring the rebels' blood entire," he commanded. The captain carried that order, his horse's flanks lathered by haste. Envoys returned with chains clinking. 3 girls, kin to Teumman, their veils embroidered with faded horns. One spat at the gates, earning a lash's kiss. The palace absorbed them, their fates woven into the wall's tail. The machine expanded, but cracks spidered deserters in the ranks, omens sour in the livers. Tanittu's shadow lengthened, her whispers threading the corridors like roots under stone. He made one error that would haunt the carvings, underestimating the river's memory. The breaking came under a sky bruised purple, the Karun's waters churning like a god's wrath. Susa loomed, its ziggurat a finger accusing the clouds. Ashurbanipal's host encircled it 60,000 strong, their fires a necklace of embers. Siege towers rose like iron giants, rams pounding gates in heartbeat rhythm. From the walls, Elamites hurled stones and scorn, their catapults flinging clay pots of naphtha that burst in greasy flames. Tanittu watched from a hidden eyrie, smuggled north by her web of whispers, her heart a drum against ribs. She had fled the palace months prior, dagger's edge buying her horse from a sympathetic groom. Now, clad as a camp follower, she moved among the besiegers, eyes sharp for weakness. Slow the moment, stretch it taut. Dawn's first light gilds the towers, dew beating on spear tips. A horn wails Assyrian assault, ladders bite the walls, grapples hooking stone. Arrows whistle, fletched black as ravens. An Elamite archer looses from a crenel, his shaft grazing a captain's cheek, the same who guarded her march, blood welling hot. He climbs on, rope taut in fists. Below, the ram thunders, gates splintering like dry bone. Smoke coils from braziers, acrid with burning pitch. Tanittu presses to the throng's edge, her veil low, breath shallow. She spots him then, Ashurbanipal, in his chariot, distant on a rise, his banner snapping storm god fierce. "For Elam," she whispers, slipping a flint from her sleeve. The gates yield with a groan, wood sharding inward. Assyrians pour through, bronze flashing in torch glow. Screams rise, not animal panic, but human fracture. A father's roar as his son's throat opens. A woman's plea cut mid-syllable. The ziggurat's shadow stretches long, swallowing the melee. Elamites fight cornered, spears thrusting from alleys, their faces smeared with soot and resolve. Tanittu darts through the chaos, her path to the royal tomb Susa's heart, where Teumman's bones lay desecrated. Guards fall to her blade, quick and quiet, their gurgles lost in the din. She reaches the crypt, salt already scattered by advanced sappers, crystals glinting like fallen stars. With trembling hands, she gathers shards of her father's urn, tucking them to her breast. High on the walls, the captain crests the parapet, sword slick. Elamites yield in waves, hands raised, eyes hollow. One, a boy no older than 12, lunges wild, dagger glancing off mail. The The captain hesitates, blade hovering. Down, he growls, but the boy spits blood, charging again. The strike lands clean, the child crumpling like a reed. The captain kneels, pulse hammering, as rain mingles with crimson. Around him, the sack unfolds. Temples gutted, their horns smashed to echoes. Treasuries yawning empty, gold hauled in carts. Women herded like lambs, their veils torn in the crush. No single horror dominates, it's the scale, the relentless tide. Whole streets empty, echoes mocking the victor's cheers. Ashurbanipal enters at noon, chariot wheels crunching bone dust. He surveys the ruin, ziggurat razed, its bricks tumbled like a child's blocks. Fields sown salt white, promising barren centuries. Thus ends Elam, he declares to scribes, voice carrying over wails. But the crack forms in the quiet aftermath. Tanittu emerges from the crypt, urn clutched, only to find the captain, his face ashen, sword loose. Recognition flickers. "You," he breathes, hand half raised. She bolts, but not before hurling a naphtha at his feet. Flames erupt, singeing his cloak, buying her seconds. Alarms ring as she races to the river, Elamites rallying in her wake, a knot of desperate kin. Spears scavenged from the fallen, the overreach bites deep. Ashurbanipal's engineers, drunk on triumph, torch the royal archives tablets of Elam's lore, curling to ash. A diviner's cry halts them. Omens sour. Ashur withdraws his gaze. Panic ripples. The king orders retreat, but too late, rain-swelled Karun rises, sweeping supply barges downstream. Thousands drown in the flood, their armor dragging them under. Tanittu reaches a reed boat, her father's shards at her feet, vanishing into mist. The machine stutters. Back in Nineveh, carvers etch the victory, but Tanittu's form twists, not kneeling, but standing, a ghost in the garden's shade. What followed was unraveling, slow as salt dissolving stone. Ashurbanipal returned, laden with spoil, Susa's gods in carts, their eyes blindfolded in defeat, ivory thrones splintered for kindling, bones of kings ground to dust for mortar. He feasted in the garden, cup raised to Libbali-sharrat, her smile a veil over unease. Teumman's head, mummified now, grinned from its branch. But reports soured the wine. Elam's remnants coalesced in the marshes. Tanittu's name, a banner. Umanigash executed for treason, his daughters scattered to provincial beds. The empire's edges frayed, Egypt slipping Pharaoh to Harka's grasp. Arabian caravans veering south. Ashurbanipal ruled on, his library a bulwark against decay. Tablets piled, medical rites for festering wounds, astronomical omens charting eclipses. He died in 631, perhaps of fever, perhaps poison from a brother's cup. His sons squabbled over the throne, Ashur etil Ilani brief, Sin Shar Ishkun doomed. By 612, Babylon's fires consumed Nineveh, Medes, and Chaldeans, toppling its walls like dominoes. The machine seized, gears rusted in the Tigris mud. Tanittu, legends whisper she birthed a line in the hills, her descendants weaving Elam's songs into Persian looms. Power shifted east, to Cyrus's tolerant hand, where salt fields greened anew. Long-term, the irony stings. Ashurbanipal's brutality bought decades, but sowed the seeds of fall. His carvings, meant to eternalize might, now teach fragility empires as fleeting as river mist. A century and a half dragged the world through Persian pomp and Greek phalanxes. Alexander's horse trampled Susa's regrown vines. Rome's legions eyed the Euphrates with envy. But Nineveh slumbered under tell mounds, its gypsum ghosts untouched till 1,840 rain carved a fox's path through the Kuyunjik hill. A British explorer, Austin Henry Layard, followed that trail curious, chisel in hand. He dug not for gold, but glory. Tales to rival Herodotus, proof of Scripture's Nahum, who prophesied Nineveh's worm-eaten end. Layard arrived in 1845, Mosul's bazaars buzzing with Ottoman intrigue. With Hormuzd Rassam, his dragoman's kin, he tunneled into the mound, picks striking slabs that hummed with buried lives. First came bulls' winged sentinels, 5 tons of stone, their beards curling eternal. Then, the palace, Ashurbanipal's north wing, walls unfolding like a god's scroll. Layard traced fingers over the garden scene, breath catching at Teumman's leer from the tree. Sardanapalus, he murmured, mangling the name from Greek whispers. But deeper digs unveiled the machine. Reliefs of Susa's sack, captives marching in endless file, women's forms etched with quiet defiance. By 1854, crates shipped to London, brimmed panels crated like coffins, shipped downriver on the Tigris's moody flow. The British Museum unrolled them, gas lamps flickering on gypsum glow, crowds gasped at the banquet, king and queen toasting amid gore. Scholars pored over cuneiform, decoding Ashurbanipal's boasts, eyes sowed salt in their lands, and glimpsed Tanittu's shadow in fragmented annals. The rebel's daughter, who spat at the throne, layered, knighted for his spade, penned volumes that stirred parlors. Nineveh and its remains, pages alive with dust and drumbeat. He humanized the horror, not monsters, but men building against oblivion. One panel, cracked but clear, showed a woman's hand extended not in plea, but as if offering a hidden blade. "Eternity's witness," Layard wrote, reminding us that walls whisper back. That whisper echoes sharper now. Archaeologists returned in the 1,920 seconds. Max Mallowan, Agatha Christie's husband, brushing away Median ash to map the library's fall. Tablets surfaced, medical papyri on phantom pains, omens for kings' fevers. In 2003, amid Iraq's strife, UNESCO raced to shield the ruins, sandbagging bulls against shrapnel. Today, the British Museum's halls hum with school children tracing Tanittu's curve, their fingers hovering where chisels bit. Tangible as a lover's scar, these stones prove the machine's flaw. Power carves deep, but memory endures deeper. Why does this matter, 2 millennia on? Not for shock's thrill, but the mirror it holds. Modern strongmen parade the humbled on screens, not slabs, rebel daughters reduced to hashtags, their defiance clipped to sound bites. We see it in refugee marches, where one woman's stand ripples borders, in digital ledgers tallying the displaced, salt-sown fields, now drone footage of barren craters. This tale teaches power's paradox. The harder the grind, the louder the ghost. Human nature bends to systems, but snaps back. Tanittu spit, an archetype for every quiet revolt. Resistance isn't thunder, it's the river carving stone, patient, unyielding. Empires fall, but the bold persist, their stories outlasting bronze. Return to that garden, but changed. Vines still heavy, but the tree stands bare. Teumman's branch sawn in the sack of 612, his lyre lost to flame. Ashurbanipal's couch empty, Libbali-sharrat's chair dust-moted. The harp strings snap in the breeze, notes fading to wind's sigh. Tanittu walks free in the reliefs now, her form unchained by time's chisel. She pauses at the arbor's edge, hand on a vine, eyes on horizons unseen. They meant to etch her shame eternal, but shame erodes, spirit endures. She stands there still, 2,700 years on, because voices like hers refuse the silence. If this tale stirred something in you, the machine's hum, or a river's defiant flow, drop a comment below. What ghost from history haunts your thoughts? Your words keep these stories breathing.